Hello. Thanks for checking out my video. Thanks for joining me. It's Sunday, which means it's Book Review Sunday. Every week, I try to listen to or read a book and then share it with you on Sunday. This week, I picked a really dense book. And the reason why I picked this book, I heard this book talked about in a podcast, and then Dave Savage strongly recommended this book to me. And so I had to give it a listen. The name of the book is The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro, Kishimi, and Fumitake, Koga. Now, this book is a great book. It is a great listen to. It's been a bestseller. I think it sold over 3.5 million copies. It came to fame first in Japan, where the two authors are household names, not only in Japan, but throughout Asia. And what the book does is it really dives deeply into the Aldrian philosophy on life, on a contemporary life. And what this is, it's almost a rebuke of Freud and Jung, where Freud and Jung said, look, we are really determined by our past. That's who we are today. Alder, who was at the same period, studied at the same school, said, no, we are not determinists. It's not determinism. We are not determined by our past. We choose who we are. We choose our future. And so his book is about how to live the best you. And sometimes the things that he says in the book are controversial or confusing, or you may disagree with, or extremely hard to understand. This is a book that you have to listen to a few times, take a lot of notes, and really take your time to digest. That's one of the reasons why it's going to be a challenge to try to review the full part of this book with you today, because there's just way too much to cover, and I'll give you an idea. So I'm going to share my screen here. You can see a copy of the hardcover book, The Courage to be Disliked, up in my top left-hand corner. Below that is the Audible. I listen to the Audible. I recommend you listen to the Audible. I'll explain that in a minute. But you can just get the density of the book by looking at the table of contents. It's grouped into 5 conversations, and the conversations happen over 5 nights. And so the sections of the book are the first night, the second night, the third night. And as you can tell from my table of contents I'm sharing with you, there's 56 chapters, and none of them are light. None of them are fast. All of them are extremely weighty. It's good. It's really good content. I really recommend this book. So the way that this book is laid out is especially in the Audible, which is why I really like the Audible, because what the book does is the authors are in the Audible book are trying to replicate teachings from Socrates as shown by Plato, and that is where the teacher or the instructor teaches by questions and by dialogue, and it usually comes from dialogue that's a conflict where like the student disagrees with the teacher, and so they have a very innocent conversation about the meaning and explanation and all those types of things. And so that's what makes the book so good to listen to, because you have the philosopher who's the teacher in the book, and then you have the student who is a disbeliever on elders' teachings, and they argue a little bit, and that lets the professor or the philosopher continually repeat and explain the philosophy so that you can understand it. And on top of that, there's a commentator that comes in, which is incredible. So I'm going to just give you some of the highlights of the book, and then at least the best that I can, and then we're going to just kind of move on. So here's the thing. The book tries to answer the question of how you can achieve real happiness. And as I said, it uses the insights from Aldrian psychology. And part of that is rethinking the notion of self-acceptance, interpersonal relationships, personal growth, and personal freedom. And it's a really neat book. And I'm just going to give you a few of the highlights. There's 56 chapters, each with a theme that you can spend an hour or 2 hours working through each of those chapters and each of those themes. But here are the two really key behavioral objectives in Aldrian psychology. There's 2 things you got to start out with. The first thing is that people should be self-reliant as individuals, right? And what this speaks to is I have the ability to shape my own life. That's the key. That's the key psychological overview. And then the second part, key concept is that I need to live in harmony with society. And part of that are people are my comrades. They're not my competitors. Really important notion, right? And so in here, I'm just going to, like I said, I'm just going to kind of speak to some of the concepts and themes there. I'm not doing it justice. What I hope to do is invite you to listen to the book. And it is a great listen. As I showed on the screen, it's 6.5 hours. Man, it flew by for me. I listened to it in 3 different sessions, and I really enjoyed it. I did it while I was out doing nature hikes, so it's perfect background. The people who read the book have really pleasant voices. It's laid out really well. But here's some of the key concepts, and which you may or may disagree with, or it may bring emotions or thoughts to you. Here's the first one: your past doesn't dictate your future. I love that concept, right? And in this under this, there's some complicated things. That's why the chapters are really heavy. It's etiology versus teleology. And I'm maybe not saying these words right, but etiology is where you believe in determinism, that the past determines who you are. Teleology is you have the freedom to choose your future. Essentially, those are the two. And so they speak to this quite a bit in the book. I mean, it comes up repeatedly with encouraging a teleology philosophy. The second thing is there is no trauma. Your past trauma isn't creating who you are. How you interpret your past trauma, how you carry it around, how you use it does dictate your current you. But you have the power to choose how you deal with that trauma, right? And that next goes our emotions. Many of our emotions are contrived to support our story of who we are, or our story of what the world is, and that we should be able to get in charge of our emotions to make sure that they are working for us. The next concept under the past doesn't dictate your future is the courage to change. A lot of times people don't change because they're comfortable with the reality of who they are and what their world is, even if it's bad. Bad may be safer than the unknown. And so you need to have courage to change. And then next, of course, is focus on the here and now. And part of that is we don't own the past and we don't own the future. The only thing we own is the present. And the book really goes into how to live in the present and why that's important. Now, the second thing is gaining freedom through personal responsibility. This is the second main concept of the book. This first speaks to holism. Holism means that you as an individual are one thing. You can't separate your emotion from your mind, from your physiology. You are a whole thing, and that you have to approach yourself from that holism point of view. It's in this under this key concept. Speaks to the desire recognition, how we shouldn't desire recognition, and what this speaks to is it speaks to, and this also speaks to the title, The Courage to be Disliked. The whole thought is we shouldn't care what other people think about us, right? We shouldn't want their recognition. We shouldn't want their praise. We don't care about their criticism. We should have the courage not to care so that we could achieve the best self. We can have the greatest self-actualization if we don't care, right? And that doesn't mean we don't love other people. It doesn't mean they aren't important, but that as it'll go into in the next section, our task, that is somebody else's task to judge us. That's not our task. And if it's not our task, we shouldn't concern ourselves with it. We shouldn't care. And that's what it has to do. So we should not have a desire for recognition. We should do good or do right because it's the right thing to do. And doing the right thing makes us feel good. It makes us be the person we want to be. And that goes to self-approval. Now, there's lengthy comments about the feeling of inferiority, how it can be good, but an inferiority complex is bad, as is a superiority complex. Those are really interesting concepts in the book. I like that. This whole task separation, we can't take another person's task. If we try to take another person's task, or if we meddle in another person's task, it creates all sorts of ills, both for us and for them. That is probably one of my favorite kind of concepts in the book. In there, it leads to horizontal and vertical relationships, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And that's the third concept is really the third concept is gain happiness through active contribution. And in this concept under that is the relationships, interpersonal relationships are the root of all problems. And that's the best way to explain it is when we compare ourselves to something else, which that comparison can only come through relationships. The interpersonal relationships, that's where a lot of our misery comes. And that's when a lot of who we try to morph into something that we're not. We give the power ourselves away to conform to other people's opinions. The horizontal relationships is an awesome concept. And that is why all people are equal. They're different but equal. And you need to treat people equally, which means you have a horizontal, one-to-one horizontal versus vertical. Vertical is if you think your boss is superior to you, or if you're a child, you think your parent is superior to you. But if you think that all people are the same, right, you're horizontal. Like we're different, we have our own skill sets, but you and I have the same value as humans. I really like that concept. It was one of my favorite parts of listening to the book. And the whole thing is the book, the aspiration is what we try to do is contribute to community. That is where we get happiness. And that's what gives meaning to our life. I'm really truncating all this. The thing I would hope you do, check it out. It's a good book. It's such a pleasant listen to. I can tell you I'm committed to listening to this again. I might even be committed to listening to it again and again, just so that I can get a better grasp of all the concepts. I hope you got something out of this review. I know I wasn't able to go deep. I know I couldn't explain these concepts, but hopefully I got you interested in listening to the book. That's it. It was a great book. I appreciate you guys listening to me. I appreciate you stopping by on a Sunday. With that, I'll wish you a great end of your week, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much.